Today we are going to go through the fourth part of our accessibility in higher education series here with the IDEA Committee. Um, so session 3 today is going to be based around accessibility in physical spaces. So we're going to do more of a roundtable type discussion. We have a few different panelists from different sectors and different areas who work within the higher ed space, from consulting, engineering to end users at the university, as well as the procurement side on the higher ed end. So first, we will start with introductions. So me as the moderator, one of the moderators at least. So my name is Joshua Joseph. Some of you guys know me, some of y'all don't. And so I'm the VP of Sales at TechBox Drop-in AV. We're a control system manufacturer, but I've also been part of the IDEA committee for the past year and a half or so. So we've been working on putting together some content for some solutions and some things that can be implemented within your institution around the physical space and accessibility and the importance of it and the different areas of accessibility, because sometimes a lot of people do think of only certain aspects when it comes to accessibility within physical spaces. So Xavier, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yes. All right. Hello, everyone. So great to be here. Thank you all for having me. I actually scrolled through the list of individuals, and some of you I know, and some of you I do not. So my name is Xavier Kelly, a business development manager with Bose Professional. I've been in the industry now for about 10 years, coming from live events, rental and staging, into distribution. And then on the integration side of the business, working in higher education, in the conferencing and collaboration space, and now a business development manager with Bose. And so obviously with Bose, we work in pretty much every vertical market. So now on the manufacturing side, and really grateful to be here. I'm probably the newest member to the ETC IDEA committee, but it's been a thrill being on the committee so far. Already have learned quite a great deal, and excited to kind of share this panel with these illustrious guests. So thank you once again.
Appreciate you, sir. So yeah, we'll just start with introductions with the panel. Linda, I'll let you do an introduction, and then we'll go in order as the screen says.
Great. Hi, everybody, and thank you for attending. I'm hoping my internet holds out for the duration of this. I'm Linda Gedimer. I'm the AV engineering manager with the Faith Group. Faith Group's based in St. Louis. I am based in the Los Angeles area. I have my background is I have 35 years in the AV engineering, both on contracting and the consulting side. And I have a PhD in acoustical engineering, so I have a strong interest in how acoustics affects the learning environment. So
fantastic. Raj?
Raj is muted.
Oh yeah, Raj is muted. There you go.
Oh, sorry about that. Rookie move right there, you know. Hey everyone, I'm Raj Singh. I've been in the AV industry for quite a while, as well as everybody here. What's interesting is, what I always tell people is that most people don't start in AV. Everybody ends up in AV. My background was through IT, and that's how I transitioned into AV. And in my role right now, what I do is I work for University of Southern California. I manage the design and engineering team. So pretty much multiple campuses across downtown LA, our main campus here in downtown, our health science campus, the Children's Hospital, and a few other spaces as well too. And I'm really excited to be part of this panel here and also learn from everyone here in terms of experiences that we've had with regards to designing spaces that are accessible. And I'm really excited to be here with you guys.
Sure. Last but not least, Reza.
Hi everyone, my name is Raisa Ramos Dethridge, Ray for short, for anyone who wants to address me. It's just easier. I am currently the procurement specialist for the Office of Instructional Resources here at the University of Central Florida. I've been procurement specialist for a couple of years now, but I've been working in instructional resources for almost 11 years now. So I mainly just pay for all the equipment that we put in spaces on our campuses.
Fantastic. So again, like David said, I appreciate everyone being able to join us for sure our panel. So David, I'll let you kick it off.
Yeah, for sure. Well, one, I think it's great that we have such a diverse panel of speakers, especially on a topic like this. And I think the best way to kind of start this off is really to kind of understand what accessibility means to everyone in their respective discipline, right? Being that everyone does come from different aspects of the industry, all kind of coming together because of AV and technology. So I guess I'll kind of start with Raj, with yourself, right? What does accessibility kind of mean within your organization, and within like what specific spaces are you kind of considering some of the like 5 key aspects of people with differing disabilities, or additionally any type of like design considerations around those different disabilities in your spaces? So exactly what does accessibility kind of mean to you?
I think that's a great question, Xavier, with regards to accessibility and what it means to everybody. I mean, for me being in higher ed, being part of a university, well, the way I look at it, it's a question of our senses. You know, we're all human beings first, and spaces are what we exist within. So what we see, what we touch, what we hear, how can we reach those spaces, and who those individuals are in terms of whether it's faculty, they have a certain role to play in an academic institution where they are teaching, students when they're learning, and as well as staff, in terms of how we're supporting and making sure that these spaces are sustainable, not for what they're being used right now, but also in the future. So to me, accessibility is a very holistic term, and I like to look at it in all the different ways, but I want to always start with the human being first in terms of how they interact with the space, how they learn. A lot of times accessibility, could be non-physical as well too. It could be learning accessibility. It could be, things like that. So taking a holistic approach to that and understanding is key. And it could be also be with regards to the physical space in terms of how somebody feels in that space. It could be something as simple as the air conditioning, the temperature. A lot of that add up to an experience that makes it easy not only to learn and also but to teach for faculty, but also to collaborate and support for these spaces.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I think that when you, all things considered, right, when we're talking about accessibility and the differing aspects of it, I think that when we talk about design, it's almost natural that we understand what the goals are. But every time we talk about goals, there's also challenges that come with designing some of these spaces. So, Linda, I will kind of pose this question to you as a consultant and someone who has designed these spaces in partnership with universities. What are some of the most significant, I guess, challenges that you've seen with achieving accessibility in physical spaces within your projects? And then if you could, after you kind of expose that, can you talk to some of the more practical solutions that you were able to kind of implement in these types of environments?
Right. Thank you. To me, one of the biggest challenges I see from the consulting side is really getting all the stakeholders to the table early in the design phase. A lot of times, the design team takes off, typically led by the architect and a few key stakeholders at the university. And then as they're getting through the design, they start to bring more stakeholders on board, more consultants on board, especially specialty consultants such as AV and acoustics. And what happens is we end up designing for we're doing more of a reactive design than a proactive design if the key stakeholders aren't brought in soon enough. And there's also, people think of accessibility, they think mostly of physical accessibility, wheelchair, hearing impaired, vision impaired. But there's so many different types of issues with accessibility. I think of accessibility in the terms of comfort. Is the student comfortable learning in that environment? Is the teacher comfortable teaching in that environment? Have we approached people that are maybe on the spectrum, and their comfort and their ability to learn in these spaces? And sometimes these don't come to light until the design process is already down the road a bit. And then we're having to kind of engineer or design our way out of issues instead of engineering and designing the solutions in from day one. So that's what I see quite a bit of, is just getting those key stakeholders, getting everybody that's going to touch this project into the project at the table as early as possible, so that we're not designing in reactive mode. You're muted.
Rookie move. No,
Yes.
I think that you bring up a great point, right? When we talk about challenges, I think one of the major challenges, obviously outside of just, exactly what it is that we must consider, is who must we consider, right? Who are those key stakeholders? I know that when I was in design and we would come across a project that was either in a renovation stage, which I think is a bit of a challenge in itself, right? And then new design, it was always a challenge to kind of understand, all right, well, how many individuals need input into this situation or into the design considerations? And then how do we get everyone together to start to make those impactful decisions? And Raj, I mean, coming from a university like USC, there's quite a bit of stakeholders, right? Your university is massive. So how do you kind of approach not only creating that sense of urgency within the university, but how do you approach figuring out exactly which stakeholders should be involved early on in those conversations? And have you had success in one way of getting people together, or have you had more success with one way of doing it, or are there some things that you're seeing that could be room for an improvement in that scenario to start to bring people together within the university?
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail with that, Xavier. I mean, as far as with regards to with any organization, especially a university, with the scope and breadth and different types of stakeholders are involved, making sure that everybody's on the same page and making sure that that we're addressing all the issues is always key. One thing I always tell people is that we always start with the end in mind, in terms of we envision how a space is going to be used and who's going to be users of the space. And we let that drive in terms of what are the types of things we're going to look at. As an example, I mean, some of the things that, of course, we work with closely on our end is facilities, making sure that, when we have consultants, architects being brought in, there's a basis of design that we have created and worked on in terms of the best practices here at the USC that we want our partners and vendors to follow. There's the finance team. But, the most important is actually we engage very closely with students as well, too. So one of the key stakeholder that I feel, is missing in a lot of these scenarios are the students themselves and faculty, of course. I mean, we want to make sure that faculty are happy in terms of teaching the spaces. And let me give an example as far as how we leverage students in terms of making sure that the design that we're doing is very inclusive. So here at USC, within my team, we have about 125 student workers that are pretty much forms the backbone of our tier one support. And these students have a diversity of background in terms of the ethnicity, in terms of their, major and what they're doing. But not only that, there are also some students that have some type of disability as well too. It could be physical as well as learning. So what we do is we have test rooms and things like that we have created. And we invite these students to come and use the spaces and give us some critical feedback that's in an environment that's very safe. And we learn from them in terms of what's good and not good, right? In terms of, a lot of students, for them, like a reachability might be a key because they might be wheelchair bound. They could have a learning disability, or English is not their first language. I mean, we have a very big international student body. So being able to record these spaces and be able to play it back later, that's something that's of value to them. But in terms of bringing all these stakeholders together, what we've tried to do here is make sure that the spaces are inclusive, and things like we want our faculty and students to be able to teach and learn and what's conducive for them. We don't want the space to drive that or the constraints of the environment. We want the experience to drive what the outcome will look like. And I think that's where engaging with all these different stakeholders and bringing them to the table, especially the users of the space themselves, that's critical. Documenting that, making sure we map their journey, and then that drives what we're going to be doing with our architect team, with the facilities and consultants we bring on, and the IT folks as well too.
Yeah, and why I felt that was important to not only mention but to emphasize, especially in this conversation, is because oftentimes as technology professionals, we want to get straight to speaking about the technology, right? But I think it's very important that we all understand that it's important to not only think about the individuals that are going to access these spaces, but all of the major players, all of the stakeholders, and how do we bring everyone together and make sure that their voices are heard and that it is important. Raj, I think you did a great job right there of just speaking to the student network, how you incorporate the students in what it is that you do. And I think that it's important, I think, to have that approach. So I appreciate that greatly. And so this next question, I'll just kind of throw out to the panel, and you can kind of raise your hand if you want to speak to it. But as we speak about stakeholders and the need to get everyone together, when the technology conversation is had, what are some of the different things that you are considering as far as the different ways that technology can be accessible, right? What are the different disabilities that you may be considering, and kind of how does that play into kind of your next steps of designing the technology?
Well, if I could just jump in just for a couple of minutes, I don't want to dominate the presentation here. COVID actually, and I did quite a lot of work in corporate, and one of the things that we saw in corporate, which also ports over to education, is COVID really forced us to take a look at how much can we do hands-free, how much can we use voice control, how much can we use automatic sensors and things like that. And when you take a look at accessibility, some of these port over very nicely into making a space more accessible. So if you don't have a touchscreen control panel where you have to have like a PhD in computer science to figure it out, and instead the room, it can sense you and can reconfigure to your presence, or you can use voice control, or you can use simple gestures to control things. We can start looking at how these instruments can help with accessibility as well. Think about somebody that is possibly wheelchair bound, and they can enter a room and use simple voice commands to get the room to set up the technology to make the room more useful and usable to them. So
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. And kind of touching on that point, Ray, how does this really oh, I'm sorry, Josh, did you have something?
Oh no, you good. Hold that thought. I guess I was gonna try to expand on some of the things Linda was just saying, because kind of this next slide, right? Like you said, Xavier, the technology, right? With ETC technology. So a lot of times we think the technology is going to be that main thing that makes the difference in accessibility, or making things accessible for certain students or faculty. But I wanted to kind of also hear things around how does that holistic approach look to physical spaces, like with cognitive and auditory, motor, and speech, right? Because there's assisted listening, there's ADA compliance, making sure the display is at the right level. But there's all these things that sometimes get left out because we're looking at how do we make the classroom prettier, the lights brighter, the higher lumens, the paint brighter. And those are things that get overlooked a lot. So I'd kind of like to hear some ideas and solutions that, make sense of kind of like how the technology kind of bounces off those things that kind of usually get left in the dust. And I'm probably stealing your thunder, Xavier, because I was going to ask Ray the same thing, because it's like I would think that there's a pile of requests that comes, when it comes to accessibility, and how on the procurement side do you go, okay, you might can get this, and this, and there's things that to me might continue to get overlooked as things go on because it seems not important to this space, but it usually is, right? It could be the paint is just too bright in the classroom, and that just affects students throughout the whole semester. But it's kind of a long question, but yeah, I just had that in my mind. Sorry. Anybody can run
Ray,
with it.
oh, I think Ray and Mike.
Yeah, I did. So, I was just gonna say, like, a lot of the pain points, one of the major pain points, especially when you are in a public institution, like a state institution, like, is funding. It's always going to be funding. And we normally like try to do a roundtable of everyone, basically looking at the expectations of the end user and then seeing what their budget is and then just kind of being realistic with it, and telling them exactly that. Just not to, we try to address as many issues as we can in terms of accessibility, and we're just very forthright with the end user, and as we collaborate with everybody else who's part of the project. And there are times where we can't fit everything in it because they don't have that much of a budget. We're just not given that much of a budget, unfortunately. The economy the way it is, and inflation the way it is, and state funding the way it is, and how tight it is, it's difficult to try to address all the issues at once. So we normally just try to kind of do the main things as much as we can and then go back to it in kind of like phases. So that kind of like offsets, because the budget replenishes every fiscal year. So if we can't get it in this fiscal year, maybe next fiscal year we can address A, B, and C.
Gotcha. And within that light, as a design consultant, that was probably always, it was the most important conversation, but sometimes the hardest conversation to have is when you just ask, hey, what is the budget, right? Because when you step into a room or a space and you're dealing with stakeholders, everyone has a wish list of what it is that they want. They understand in many cases what it is that they need, but budget always either limits or brings to reality what is actually possible. And I guess a kind of interesting question around budgets and how that is, how technology is affected, right? How much do like the AV trends of the day actually affect what goes into the budget, right? What is being considered, and how important is that? Not only from your side, Raj, as a university, but also Ray, on your side, right, within procurement. What considerations in that light kind of make the most impact, and how much impact do the AV trends kind of have on the decisions that are made in the from a budget standpoint and from a technology standpoint?
No, I think that's a great question, Xavier. And one thing I do want to say is that at USC, we will always make sure that our procurement folks are very happy with us, and finance team, to make sure that any projects we have are always moving quickly and smoothly. And it is a good partnership that I think people should always look forward to having, not avoiding, because procurement is there to make life easy for everybody. And I think that's something that gets lost on people. And budget conversations are difficult conversations, but they're meant to be had and not avoided. And I think, for us, when we look at the technology landscape and how things are changing, one of the things we always look at is, yes, there might be new technology, there might be new products, but how well does it align with the goal of the university for teaching and learning and collaborating? Because if it lines up well, majority of the time, there will be ways in which the administration would go look and find something to fund it for our students. And I think, especially when you look at, as Linda mentioned, with things like COVID that's happened, that's one of the biggest accelerators to a digital transformation that IT and AV has had in the past 4 or 5 years, what I'm saying? And to Joshua's point, in terms of what we're seeing up on the slide deck,
do anything in,
oh, sorry. But to Joshua's point, in terms of how people may need access in spaces like higher education, these are high level breakdowns. And of that, I mean, as an example, like, I can give you an example of a space that folks from ETC had a chance to visit here at a University of Southern California. We hosted ETC here last year. The last ETC, sorry, last year. We were in a gaming lab, and the things that Joshua mentioned, a lot of these things we considered. And what would that look like? Things like automation, walking into a space, making sure that the systems turn on automatically is one step that somebody who's wheelchair bound, somebody has accessibility issue may not have to deal with. The lighting presets, them turning to the right preset that's conducive to teaching in the room. Again, that's an automation that can be put in place and that can be applied across the board with, technologies that are prevalent in the industry right now. And that could be standardized. So that way, cost-wise, you're making sure the procurement department is happy. It's a standardized piece of equipment. When you look at something like in a gaming lab and using that as a template, if somebody has accessibility issues, one thing we try to do was make sure in the gaming lab, all the tables and chairs were at a level that were a wheelchair accessible. So somebody they're pulling in on a wheelchair, they can access the system in the same height as somebody who's on a chair, on a normal chair. All the computers being sitting on the table, making sure that it's easily reachable. It's kind of like driving a car. You want to make sure everything is within arm's reach when you're sitting on your chair. So if there's a computer there for gaming and somebody wants to bring their own keyboard and mouse, they can reach and connect to it. In terms of audio accessibility, right? Somebody may have a hearing impairment. So things like assisted listening, a lot of those things nowadays, where back in the day, you need to have, an induction loop on the floor. But now with Wi-Fi enabled systems, they can be incorporated very easily into different types of applications that we have over there. Somebody who may have issues with regards to a vision or not being able to see certain things. I mean, there's color ways in which we can showcase, slide decks and things like that have high contrast. So that helps with that as well too. But the key idea that I want to get across is that a lot of these problems that when it comes to accessibility can be solved in a way that is very cost effective these days. And it's almost I don't want to be too harsh, but it's almost a shame if we don't apply that in a standardized practice across the board. Because end of the day, I mean, if the space is not serving the needs of the users and the students, then then that's a problem at that point, especially when it comes to collaboration and sharing. Even things like, when it comes to with COVID times and everything else, all the spaces here at USC have Zoom room systems. So now faculty have the ability to record any of the spaces and to have things like closed captioning enabled. We have things like we're using right now, AI Companion, that allows you to provide, what somebody's saying and transcribe everything in real time almost at this point. And again, the incremental cost on that is very minimal once you have a standard basis established across the board to serve all these individuals out there that may have a disability needs or they need access for that as well too.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as, go ahead. Sorry, Xavier.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Raj. My apologies.
No, I think I'm all good right now.
Are you sure? Because that was my fault. I jumped the gun a little bit. I saw something come into the chat and
no, please. I mean, there's plenty more conversations to be had.
Yeah, there was two questions that came up in chat, and I'd kind of like to take a stab at both of them, if that's okay with the panel. So Cass asked about workarounds for situations where there isn't a budget, and brings up a very good point of like the accessible lecterns. These can get quite pricey, and what happens when you want to provide them in a good deal of your classroom so that any teacher can use any classroom if that's desired. But how do you handle that from a budget if you don't have the budget to buy one for each classroom? And that I see that in a lot where they don't have, like for a hearing impaired system, they might not have the money to put a hearing impaired system or accessible lectern or several of these other types of systems in every classroom. And it's where you just have to take a look at, okay, what accessible system is portable and can be shared between rooms. So the room becomes a little bit more, I'd like to say, generic. The room is not set up for any one particular tech that's hardwired into the room, that it becomes more of you look at the room as a little bit more generic, but able to be changed easily by using more portable equipment. And then that equipment can be shared between classrooms, which can lower your cost. So you look at how many accessible systems are portable and can be easily and quickly set up in basically any room. And what we're seeing is that's also helpful for what happens now when the classroom isn't really just a square classroom. I'm seeing teaching spaces become these open collaborative areas that are a lot more friendly than just a four-walled classroom. It speaks to the same thing. If you can find those systems that are easily portable, the only upside challenge with that is finding the storage space for these systems. If you're not using them at all times, you have to find storage space for them. So, Cass, I hope that helps to answer, part of the question that you brought up is just going with portable systems that can be easily shared between rooms and does not require like an entire technical staff to set them up where they're needed. And then the other one that Stefan asked is about the stakeholder engagement and stakeholder mapping. That's a very good point. Short of actually building and testing, are you able to use things like virtual reality? Yes, virtual reality is becoming a very powerful tool because you can set up an entire model, a very, very realistic working model of a classroom in virtual reality using things like digital twinning, and have people use virtual reality to literally walk through the space or fly through the space to get the look and feel of where things are going to be, which can help early in design decisions, because it's a little bit nerve-wracking to say, gosh, I hope this works in the real world. And then you don't find out until it's built and you're like, you know what, we should have put this somewhere else. Where virtual reality, building in virtual reality, can really help solve some initial issues before you actually spend the money to build the space. Working in virtual reality doesn't come without its own cost, but it can really save a lot of heartbreak and agony and money on the back half, where you don't want to find out that you have a problem once the room is already built. So just wanted to address those two.
Yeah, no, thank you. That was great. And Ray, I see that you had your hand up, so I'll go ahead and let you speak there.
Just speaking on the first question in regards to budgetary constraints, us as a university, we also compile a multimedia bid where we get discounts per manufacturers, which actually really helps the end user and our design team and engineer kind of like figure out what's going to work and what to include in the actual proposal to the end user. So we try to help as much as we possibly can. And a lot of schools down here in Florida like to piggyback off that multimedia bid. So it's not solely just segregated to UCF. It's very open to like all Florida schools. So we try.
Awesome. No, thank you. Thank you, Ray. I think that was a great point that you brought that up. And so I do appreciate that. Hopefully that answered the questions in the chat, and feel free as we go through this conversation to add those questions, because not only does it add context to what it is that we're saying, but it helps for anyone that has an idea or a thought that comes to mind. It helps for you to get it out with the group, and hopefully we can all kind of solve those things together, right? That's at the end of the day, that's what we're all here for. And so with that, I'll kind of move on to the next topic and kind of speak to, obviously we've talked a lot about budget constraints. We've talked a lot about, some of the technology, but what are some of the ways that a university can promote inclusivity, all right, and promote the need for accessibility for all of the different ways people may have needs, and how can that be promoted? And at the same time, we don't dilute the quality or integrity of the solutions that we're implementing or the solutions that we're designing just because the budget is in the way. So what are some of the ways, maybe Raj, you can speak to this, Ray, you can speak to this as well. What are some of the ways that a university can promote the importance of these matters to ensure that the quality of the technology is there when it's implemented?
I think that's a great question. Yeah. So in terms of, how can we promote inclusivity in all our spaces and projects and designs that we're doing is to ensure that it's part of the design process to begin with, right? So as an example, one of the things that we look at USC is when we design and build spaces, we design and build it in such a way where it's not obvious to most folks that it is designed to be accessible. As an example, like, when we go into any of our classrooms, the furniture is exactly the same. There's no changes across the board. So if somebody has accessibility needs, whether it's physical and they walk into the space, they're using the same furniture in terms of it's not height adjustable, anything else. It's the same standard table and chair because the room is fully controllable from somebody who's seated or standing, because for ADA height compliancy, they can reach it. So that is built in to the specification for all our spaces across the board. And I think making something inclusive is almost making something the default. That's the way I think. If something is the default right there and moving forward, it's already in place, then it's automatically accepted as a standard, at least for us moving forward in terms of making sure that the space is inclusive in any and every way. And once that example has been set, to iterate from there, it becomes a very easy thing. And in terms of adding feature sets and adding different types of, capabilities, it's more of an add-on at that point than going through and making sure I have to redo everything. But, a lot of times, I do understand that, that's a very ground level conversation that everybody needs to have within the organization. And that is something, the communication with all the different stakeholders and ensuring that, technology that is being specified correctly, and also, is being approved and part of the, speaking with regards to what Ray brings to the table on the procurement side, making sure these products have been vetted and they already have specifications that are in place. That way, when it comes to buying those things, there's no questions asked. So we remove points of friction that would allow something like this to move smoothly through the process rather than having to be convinced of people, okay, you got to do this. And I think for us, that's worked very successfully. And that way we've been able to ensure all our spaces, whether it's a standard classroom, whether it's a gaming lab, it could be, the cinema school with theaters, it could be on the medical side. How do we ensure that there's something that's standardized across the board? Because one thing that's unique that we have seen on our end is our user interface doesn't change across the board. Whether it's a study room, whether it's a conference room, whether it's an auditorium, the capabilities, they all remain the same. The one thing that happens is that they get augmented in certain areas and then diminished in others.
I got you. Sorry about that. I was muted there, but thank you, Raj. I think you touched on a great point, Ray. You added some value with what you mentioned, and I think that this is my next question is really kind of going back to something that you mentioned earlier, Raj, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this, and Ray, yours as well, if you can follow. But what are some of the student-led initiatives that impact these types of decisions, and how does that what role can those student-led initiatives actually play in the process, right? When we're talking about stakeholders and things of that nature, what role do the students have in some of these initiatives that you have going on? I mean, you mentioned a little bit about it earlier, Raj, and so I thought that it'd be great to kind of touch on it, I guess, in a deeper way, and then allow Ray to have her thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, no, I think the student-led initiatives for us here at USC, they play a huge part in it. I'm saying a lot of our students that we have are very active in the campus community, whether it comes to, on the academic clubs, but also on the side where you have a disabled student association, I'm saying, where they are involved in the ADA side, making sure that, things that they're doing, there is things are in compliance with that too. So actually one of our student workers that we had, he was the president of the ADA Association at the university, and that was a huge huge opportunity for us to partner with them and ensuring that a lot of the products and technologies and spaces that we're designing is in compliance from their point of view where they can use it. We have a very close partnership with student associations when it comes to gaming, when it comes to engineering. As I mentioned, some of the things we looked at was, we have a heavy international student population. I mean, one of the feedback we got from them was having the ability to close caption, being able to review recordings at a later point, because they may not be able to learn and understand everything at the first go, was a huge, huge opportunity for them to make sure that they're successful in their journey here at USC. As well as, when you think about students when they're working with faculty as well too. So we have a very close partnership with the academic senate, understanding as far as, teaching assistants and research assistants that may be part of that as well too. Like when they're teaching a class, they have a unique perspective that they bring to the table, right? Because they've been students themselves and also now they're faculty or part-time faculty and they're teaching. So working with them and understanding in terms of how the space can be utilized and augmented in terms of capabilities has been huge for us. And again, as you mentioned, I mean, technology is only as good as how it's applied and it's used. And to us, we want to make sure that it's used to its full capability. And sometimes less is more. We try to make sure that, a lot of times when we provide something, we're not overwhelming our users with capability and options as well, too. As an example, like, if somebody is wheelchair bound, they're teaching in a room or a space, we only have one camera that's facing front of the room. It just makes it easy, when it comes to, and that was a feedback we actually got from one of our teaching assistants who was a student as well as doing teaching with the faculty as well too. They said that it mimics what they're used to teaching when they're teaching in front of a laptop. Usually students are concerned about being able to see what the faculty is teaching and writing on the board, and they want to hear what somebody else is saying in the room. So that was a big light bulb moment for us when we worked with our students who were like, okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. You know what I'm saying? Instead of having multiple cameras, we could just have one where that way faculty can teach. And also students are also paying attention to what's pertinent to them rather than what somebody else is saying in the room, right? And that was something, I mean, we were able to gain a lot of key insights working with students, and that was very helpful for us on that.
Awesome. And Ray, did you have anything that you would like to add? That's, some of the things that you all may be doing?
Well, I know a lot of time that we have our assistant directors and some of our team meet with groups on campus that are centered for faculty and staff and students. Like I know one of the regulars that come into our office is one of the employees for the Student Accessibility Services group that we have on campus right now. And they meet with us and kind of like go through like different aspects of equipment and spaces that they would like to see in there. Just kind of getting just ideas from different groups. Like we have a faculty teaching and learning department that that specifically deals with staff and faculty and their needs in the classroom. And then we'll meet with them and just kind of like have a brainstorming session sometimes and see if, have like a punch out list on what they would like to see, and then we kind of go through things and see if it's feasible, because I keep up a database also with the manufacturer discounts on equipment so we can easily access pricing. So that's kind of what we do. And I try to keep it up to date as much as I possibly can, so that way it's like kind of a seamless budgetary process, and they can get their proposals when they meet with everyone in a very like speedy time.
Yeah, I think that when we have these discussions, one of the biggest keys to success is having reliable information that is fast, right? Fast and reliable. How quickly can we get it all together, and how quickly can we bring in all of the necessary parties to make it happen? And so I guess that kind of leads into a bit of my next question, and that is, when we're introducing these new technologies, how do you balance, innovation and at the same time ensuring access for all students. So Linda, I kind of want to ask you, what are some ways, as a consultant, when you are considering technology for these spaces, what are some of the things that you kind of consider, maybe from a technical standpoint or otherwise, to introduce innovation, right? To bring to bear new products, but also to ensure that accessibility for all.
I think the important thing about introducing new technologies is how foreign is that technology and the use of it going to be for the people who are actually using the space. Is there going to be a sharp learning curve? Because one thing that we always try to be careful about is, we don't want to introduce technology for the technology's sake. Like, oh, this is a whiz bang cool tool. You spend, the university spends a lot of money to put it in, and then all of a sudden nobody's using it because there's a sharp learning curve, or it's just not intuitive to use. And one of the things that I see, and this really started off more in other sectors, we're seeing it incorporated in travel and whatnot, is recognizing that people are very comfortable on their computers, their iPads, and especially their iPhones. And how much of controlling things in the room or how you interact with technology in the space can be had just by using a simple app on your phone, because that's something that pretty much all students are very comfortable using is a computer, an iPhone, or an iPad. And therefore, can we work that into technology, the use of technology within a learning space? So, my big thing is don't hand technology to people where it's going to kind of freak them out, as opposed to something that they're going to be able to just seamlessly pick up and use from day one. How do we plan for that?
Awesome. And Ray, I see your hand is up. So
Yeah, just to piggyback off what Linda was saying, I know here at UCF we actually created a classroom space actually in our building, in our office, like across from our office, called the Sandbox. We basically just kind of get like this new like technology trends and things that might do well in certain spaces and kind of test it out in that space, have faculty, have students come in and test it and see if their comfortability with technology works, and if that would ease their hesitance in technology, just to kind of test it out. So that seems to be good. We've noticed that that's a big help to deciding what goes into a space.
Right. And, Raj, you brought this up earlier, which I think is a great idea. And I've, again, done this for other sectors, is the idea of a test lab. Can you set up a space where people can actually go in and get the look, the feel, and just get used to the technology, and then provide direct user feedback on that? And I think that's a great idea. That, yeah, there's an upfront cost for that, but to think about, again, how much money, hassle, whatnot you can save when you go to implement multiple classrooms. If you already tested at least one classroom or part of one classroom, gotten all that incredibly valuable feedback from the faculty and from the students themselves, before you then go roll it out into dozens of classrooms and learning spaces. So I think that's a kind of an important thing to try and bring to the table early on is, okay, we have this capital budget, we have this budget that we're going to use to implement XYZ number of learning spaces. Can we set aside a certain percent of that budget to build out like a test space? And it doesn't have to be like a super purpose built. You could just find an empty classroom and maybe test out a few of the key components that you would like to see implemented across the board. So, can you work that early on into a preliminary budget and into a preliminary schedule? So, and I think that's really, really key, is get it tested, get it in people's hands, get it tested, and then only move forward with those pieces that are cost effective, user friendly, that a majority of the people using the space is actually going to use. So
yeah, no, which I agree. And that's a great point on that, Linda. I mean, I think one thing is that, so the spaces we have that are test rooms, we call them pre-production rooms. And there's an expectation when faculty go into that space that they're pre-production. So they're testing gear in there, but it's normal rooms where they can teach. And one thing to your question, Xavier, that I think really helps us a lot is when we communicate to our faculty and students, we always communicating in terms of what problems these things are solving. So if there's a problem in terms of, let's say a faculty is coming in and saying, well, I want to be able to use any computer I have or iPad to in this point and be able to teach in a space. So how can we solve for that problem? And usually then that answers all the questions automatically at that point. Like, how can we have a system or a product or a solution that will solve for need for accessibility in space? As an example, like I said, when you look at things like hearing aids and hearing loops and things like that, I mean, the costs on those have gone drastically down at this point. I mean, it's very easy to incorporate that is IP enabled into any of the spaces. You don't have to redo the carpeting, redo the furniture and everything else. So we always are focused on what problems we're solving, and then usually that takes care of everything else from there.
Thank you, Raj. I mean, that was excellent, and it seems that everyone is actually on board with the idea of the test environment. I think it's a wonderful thing. Obviously, right? We talk about budgets and things of that nature, and that cost savings down the line. I mean, it's tremendous, right? Because we don't just think about the actual cost from a financial standpoint. It's the opportunity cost of having the headache of dealing with getting things wrong out in the field, and then having to pay to fix those challenges. And so those are some things that we really most definitely want to consider. And we had some questions, I believe, from Stephen in the chat, and he was wondering, basically, for the needs that are described here, does this group seek out internal funds to augment local budgets, for example, to pay for improvements in physical infrastructure? And he wonders if that exists, or has this group tried to kind of lobby for that? So if anyone in the group has any information on that stance or on where that is, that would be great. And then after that, we can kind of open it up to maybe a few more questions, and then kind of we're really on the tail end of the webinar here. So I just wanted to kind of throw that question out to the group and see if anyone had an answer for it. And if not, Stephen, thank you for bringing that question to bear, because that could be something that we can look into in the future. Oh, Ray, you had something?
So I know for in terms of getting external funding, I know a lot of the groups that we deal with, a lot of times they do have like grants that they have been approved to use for improvements in the classroom in terms of different aspects of accessibility. So that is definitely something that they utilize over here. And it's a pain sometimes to try and get the money, because grants tend to kind of gatekeep a little bit of their funding. But when it does happen, it's great. It's a great opportunity for them to increase their budget and have these integral pieces of equipment in there for everyone to be able to use a space confidently.
Yeah, no,
Thank you,
which I
Ray.
agree. Thank you, Ray,
Go
for
ahead.
that. I think one thing that I will say is that, every state also, so not just federal, but even state funding as well, there are certain grants and things that may be available in terms of accessibility and things like that. And it's worth looking into. Now, to Stephen's point, I mean, yeah, you have to kind of word it a little bit in terms of if it's for research purposes, if it's to enable certain outcomes, it has to be tied to that to be able to get approval for that. But you can get very creative with that for especially spaces that are serving the needs of students in most spaces and areas. And the other source of grant funding that I would look at is also talk to your manufacturer partners. I mean, with ETC, there's a big partnership of organizations and manufacturers and dealers and integrators, and majority of them have some form of grant available for a product or things that they want to bring to the table, especially if it's a pre-production space that faculty and students and different folks might get an opportunity to try it out. And then the proof is in the pudding. I mean, if they try it and they like it, and then it's easy to scale out from there at that point.
Yeah, and going to the manufacturers, even many manufacturers have programs where they will either donate equipment for like a lab setup, or they provide discounts, educational discounts, volume discounts, and just feel good discounts, because of course it's good for a manufacturer to provide the educational institutions with equipment because it's a bit of a bragging right for them as well. So going directly to the manufacturers and not being hesitant to ask them, what can you provide to us at a deeply discounted price? What equipment can you donate for a test lab, and so on and so forth? It doesn't necessarily need to be through a grant.
Yeah, and one thing I will say as a manufacturer, groups like these really help make those initiatives possible, because manufacturers are coming into these groups, we're interacting, we're hearing what it is that the universities may be struggling with, and we have the opportunity to come together when our brands play well together, right, to deliver on those needs. So I think as the group grows, as we're more connected. Was that somebody jumping in? As a group grows, we can always come together, and if that is something that you all are looking for, I think that it's a great thing to get into, right? Because budget is always going to determine how successful these things are in some ways, but I think that relationships really help to push that to the next level. So again, thank you all for coming in and joining us today. It's been amazing. I think that for one, I've learned a great deal. As always, Raj, it's so great to speak with you, and Ray, it's been amazing as well. And Laura, as always, this is our second panel together, so enjoyed my time speaking with you, and I'll pass it off to Josh to close this out.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate everybody joining, and of course, like a lot of these topics, we can go on for probably 7 hours, but to be respectful of everybody's time. So we do have one more part in the series on June 20th. I know we kind of touched the surface about stakeholders. So Rick and Sarah from our idea committee will be diving deeper into those topics. So definitely make sure you join that if you are available, if you haven't registered yet. But you can also still access some of the previous sessions that we've done as far as this series as well. Let's see. Wanted to pull this up earlier, but these are some different resources and links because we can't get to all the topics and wonderful things that are out there in regards to accessibility that are available. But I will also put this in the chat for anybody that's still here, this whole PowerPoint, so you guys can have access to it. But yeah, like Xavier said, I definitely appreciate everybody taking the time to join us and talking about this important topic. So I will let you get back to the rest of y'all's afternoon, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, everyone.
For the next session, hopefully.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
We managed to finish on time. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Great panel.
Great.
Thanks
Thank
all.
you. Thank
Take
you.
care.
All right.